Sue?
Hello?
Also, it was only established like after the country was established. But okay, good point though. What else?
Definition of who is a Jew. They
Another
decided-
big issue that wasn't mentioned there. Should have, but wasn't. What
Or
else?
maybe intentionally it's not.
Okay, conspiracy.
Okay.
What else? What else? What just fight over in Israel now?
Property rights, where they would live.
Mhm.
Is that an issue at all? No?
Okay, I was
Kashrut.
Kashrut. Thank you.
Where
Kashrut.
the lines were, the country's limits, how far they would be out.
No.
Oh, there is a lot of options that are really
Yeah.
good and
I mean,
supposed
it's
to be
really
there.
mentioned
But
all of what you guys say.
okay, so we will.
Okay, let's see what was there. Okay, so thank you, Cantor, for mentioning the kashrut. That was the first thing. Then we had Shabbat. How the Shabbat will look like in Israel. You know, it wasn't so obvious that all the public organizations like the ministries and the like healthcare won't be open in Shabbat. Like, why not? So that was decided, and also public transportation in Shabbat. Yeah. So, and what's that? Exactly. Have a different and independent school system for people who want to have a religious school. It wasn't so obvious that it will be public school that's getting funded. That's not what we have here, right? Like if you go to religious school instead of public school, secular school, you have to pay for it, right? So in Israel, it was decided, no, we promise you'll get your independent schools with government support. And the last thing, and maybe the most hurtful thing till today, is marriage.
Of course.
Interreligious.
No,
Actually-
that the Rabbanut would have say so essentially
Yeah,
over what,
monopoly.
over marriage.
Oh,
in
And
general.
divorce, which is even more painful
Yes.
in Israel, right?
Yeah, so that means that everyone has to go through a religious marriage. So that means if you're Christians or Muslims, you don't have to go through the Rabbanut, but there is a pastor or like it will all be through a religious marriage. And if you want to be in a non-religious, like a civilian marriage, you'll have to do it outside of Israel, but the country will like acknowledge that it happened and you'll get the same rights. But it couldn't be in Israel. So that was like a big thing. Fun fact about the status quo. Status quo is like maintaining the situation as it is, right? So in Haifa, which was a big and mixed city at that time, they had a public transportation in Shabbat. Okay, that was already established maybe by the British or even before. And that means until today in Tel Aviv, which is maybe the most secular city in Israel, we don't have like a government supported public transportation, but in Haifa, which is a much smaller city, we still have that because that's the status quo and no one touch it. Okay.
oh, please
Sorry.
repeat answers that people are offering.
Okay, from now on, I promise. Thank you, and sorry. Okay, so let's dig into it a little bit more. So let's go back in time and see. We had two sides. We had the David Ben-Gurion.
Maybe we can move the.
Let's see.
Move it to the other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easy
Okay.
enough.
So I want you guys to a little bit dive into a different time with different norms, and also try to get into the Orthodox and to the seculars in Israel's perspective at that time. And let's see what do you think was important for each side. Let's start with the Orthodox. What was important?
Also, I
for them?
want to add before, for a lot of Americans, specifically American Jews, it's kind of like surprising that like they surprised that like in Israel we don't have separation of like religion or the state and church and state, let's say, okay? And I think this is we're trying to kind of like break it down to why it happened and what political power created right? And what, like what people wanted to achieve. So this is exactly what we're trying to do here.
Okay, so what do you think was important for the Orthodox Jewish side to achieve or to maintain?
I would think maintaining their own, the integrity of their own communities would have been important. Education, observance of Shabbat, the rules relating to the separation of men and women.
Okay, so when you say observance of Shabbat, why is that has to do with the state? Like, you guys can keep Shabbat here. Like, what's the difference? Why there has to be rules and laws over that?
I don't know why, but the Haredi seem to think there should be.
Okay, yes, Steve.
I mean, if they think it's a Jewish state, they
Mhm.
think that they have all the say-so over how religion is practiced. So
Mhm.
people need to kowtow to their decisions.
Can we repeat that,
Of
please?
course, yeah. So we just talked about the Shabbat and that it was important to the ultra-Orthodox Jews to maintain that. But we have actually two aspects of that. We have the symbolic one of like, we're not just any other state, we're the only Jewish state in the world. And if Shabbat would be just in any other day here, it's kind of like, what's the point? That's one aspect. But actually, I think the more important one was not being discriminated over not wanting to work on Shabbat, okay? I have actually a friend that her parents came from London because her dad was a high-tech employee there. And he said, you know, I don't want to work on Shabbat. They keep saying to me like, oh, this is urgent. You have to work on Shabbat that day. You have to work on Shabbat that week. And it's not really urgent. I mean, like, it's not like a life and days issues. And if I would say I don't want to do it, I would lose my job and I would lose my my financial support. And I'm a Jew. And here in Israel, if I would move there, no one can make me work on Shabbat by law, okay? And no one cannot hire me because I'm not willing to work on Shabbat. So for many Jews, especially observant Jews and Orthodox Jews, that was a big thing, okay? It's not just like I'm keeping Shabbat, but also I want the laws to make sure that I won't be discriminated by that. Okay. If we think about marriage, why is that? Why was that important for them?
Purity,
Okay.
purity of the bloodline.
Okay, purity of the bloodline. Can someone care to elaborate?
Well, if you have to be married by somebody of the Orthodox, then who you are is looked at by the Orthodox. So you can't mix individuals who are getting married. It's breeding. You know, you can only marry certain people of a certain religion. And they let people leave the country and get married. But unless you fit into their categories that they feel are appropriate or proper, you can't get married. So a Muslim would not be able to marry a Jew.
It also goes to the conversation you're having about Shabbat too. There are ways in which in other countries, Jewish religious law around marriage is affected by secular law in those other countries, right? And where Jews would maybe not be able to act, you know, make legal decisions about marriage because the law of the land, Dina Malchuta, you know, would supersede them. And so here they wanted to make sure that no, theirs is the way that they'll be able to officiate marriage law in the way that they want to without government getting in their way.
Okay, I will repeat that for the people on Zoom. So we had Patricia and Cantor mentioning first the idea of Jewish people, that people can marry each other, and even if they're not from the same level of observance or same denomination, everyone can still marry each other, and everyone's like believing in each other, marriage system therefore it has to be somehow organized and also like not be hurt by the laws of the country. Yeah. Okay. Now let's go. What was important to the secular side? I feel like that might be an easier answer for you guys. Try to get into their skin. What was important for them?
Well, I think probably not being bound by the laws of kashrut
Mhm.
and, Shomer Shabbos practices and Shomer Nagia and other
Mhm.
Orthodox restrictions.
Free of religion, freedom of religion. What else?
I mean, being able to access services on Shabbat they might
Mhm.
need, right? If they're not observing, to still be able to access services that they need.
Yeah, for example, we need to get groceries, we want to go out for a restaurant, we want to go to the movies. Stuff
You
like
need
that.
public, in those early days, people needed public transportation.
Yeah.
They still do, but in those days, the need was very great. And there was no public transportation except in Haifa and other places. And so those kinds of public services needed to be available too.
Yeah, if we go talking about education, we had the whole idea of like, you know what, you'll have an independent education system. What was important for the secular Jews at that time about this other systems? Like, why would they care what's going on there?
We have issues in the United States about about yeshivas, whether
Mhm.
they are adequately teaching, basic sciences, math. It's somewhat of a controversy here.
Yeah,
Was that also an issue at the founding? of Israel?
Was, is,
still
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Still
very-
is.
Yeah,
So
because
to what extent does the state, I'm jumping ahead,
Mhm.
have input into what's taught in religious schools in Israel?
I think we also need to distinguish here between mamlachti dati. Mamlachti is like public schools that founded and still funding by the country, and Haredi, which is like most of them are private or half private.
Mhm.
And also I think here it's pretty hard to separate between them because like now mostly the ultra-Orthodox are controlling these systems, but originally it was created by Zionist religious people
Mhm.
that like feel they are part of establishing the state. And this system was created by these people who felt like Zionists, but also religion. So like for them, it was kind of like the system which allowed them to kind of like fit in, right? So in one hand, I'm religious, but also I want to be part of this secular country. How can we do that? So this is like the four things.
Mhm.
Right now, and maybe we will open it up soon, the system mostly is controlled by ultra-Orthodox people that mostly don't really, or again, it's very complicated, we can open it, not necessarily are feeling part of this like vision.
Mhm.
So, and maybe again.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So we'll just like really quick go through these things. So a lot of people actually didn't care about it, like from both sides. It wasn't like something that created the whole thing in the beginning of establishing a country, because we had a war, we had a million of Olim immigrants from all over the world. We had people who just came from the Holocaust. So that wasn't like a big discussion back then, okay? It was kind of something that was like being dealt in small rooms that no one cared to talk about. But some people were already being hurt from that. Some people actually was very much had benefits from that situation, but some people got hurt. For example, we had a lot of people who had no religion, okay? For example, we had a lot of descendants of Jews who came from Russia, for example, or other countries of the former Soviet Union that were actually like religionless. They were not Jewish. They were Jewish enough to have the law for having them here, but they didn't spell Jewish. But they also didn't spell Christians. They didn't want to get married with a rabbi, nor with a priest. They just wanted to get married, like, going to the city hall. And that's not an option. So, for example, that was a big group that was discriminated by this law without, I'm sure like the Bibi Gurion didn't even thought about this option. What do you mean like you'd have no religion? Who is this people? But later after the 70s and more importantly the 90s, it was a big issue. Or for example, we had the whole issue of LGBTQ that wasn't really dealt there. Like, I don't think it was very much in the like consensus, and not even in the secular side. It wasn't something people really discussed in the 50s, and therefore it wasn't part of the status quo. And for this group, it was very hard to get the same rights that we all had.
It was something from like,
Yeah.
it was like British common law that was in effect for a long time, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know.
Yeah, there was a British law that was not
allowing.
not allowing it, but no one really forced it when Israel was a state. But after I think 30 years, Shulamit Aloni, who was in the 80s, she canceled this law. But still, that doesn't mean they can get married with a rabbi like they wanted,
Right.
or don't want. They just want to get married, and it was very problematic for this big group. Actually, it's not such a small group. Okay, but from the other hand, a lot of people really benefited from this agreement because that creates a lot of regulations. Okay, we have the whole system of kashrut, which means a lot of people, of supervisors and rabbis, and we have the whole system of education. So we don't have just one education system, we have 3 education systems. We have the secular, the religious but still learning science system, and the ultra-Orthodox system. Okay, so that's a lot of people, a lot of jobs. Okay, and many people that don't want the situation to change, because that will clearly affect their working situation. Okay, so that's important to think. It's not just politics and values, it's also money. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so many people have tried to change the status quo, actually, from, oh, that's perfect. From both sides, okay, from the secular side and from the religious side. A lot of people throughout the years try to create significant changes, but everyone was a little bit too afraid to touch it because, you know, in politics, one day you're up, one day you're down, and if you change it a little bit too much, the other side might want to revenge. People were afraid to touch it. So in the government, in the different governments, there was not a lot of big changes, but in the civilian field, like it was a lot of organizations and volunteers, a lot of people tried to create a better and more updated status quo, okay? That will actually involve all those things that we just mentioned, like, for example, the whole aspect of the law of return, or the whole aspect of the LGBTQ rights, or if we think about the kotel, the wall, and the different denominations using it, that was not part of it because no one even thought about these different groups back then. They weren't big in Israel.
They also didn't have full access to the kotel
Yeah,
at the establishment of the state.
that's true. That's a good point for 19 years. So therefore, a lot of people felt like, okay, we need to change the status quo and we need to rewrite it, but together. So many groups tried it, but the most significant one is the covenant of Gavizon and Maidan. So Ruth Gavizon is kind of like our small RBG because her name is Ruth too, and she was.
She wasn't in the Supreme Court.
No, but she was a professor of law, and she was a great leader of like human rights. She was like the head of like the Department of Human Rights in the university in Jerusalem.
Can I add something slightly gossip here?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you give a window to what's happening now.
Yeah.
One of the good criticism, like the right criticism against the Supreme Court now, was the story of Ruth Gabizon, because Ruth Gabizon was an amazing lawyer and judge. And part of the reason that she wasn't Supreme Court justice, first, I think because she was a woman, but second, because she agreed and she kind of like talking with the more conservative side. And back then was very like clashing. And I think it kind of like added to the flames of what we see now as the outcomes.
Yeah.
And part of like the anger.
Yeah,
and
so
how-
that was the more liberal secular side in this covenant was Ruth, and the other side was Rav Yaakov Medan, as which always actually knows.
Yaakov Medan lives in my, he's student of my grandpa. My grandpa actually was one of the first rabbis who started this covenant conversation with Gabizon, with Gabizon, and Rabbi Medan kind of replaced him after a few years.
Yeah, and he's religious and Orthodox, but he's not ultra-Orthodox. Is part of the domination who, of course, goes to the army and goes to the university, and his kids goes to schools that teach Torah, but also secular studies. So he was like a good partner for this discussions because he could understand both sides a little bit. And they worked in from 2000 to 2002, okay, 2 years about that. They wrote a book with more than 300 pages, okay? So really try to cover everything. All the things you just mentioned and we thought will be in the first letter was there. And in some issues, they weren't agreeing with each other, but they found like some things that they can both live with, okay? So it was a very interesting thing, and many people got hopeful after this covenant was written. Okay, let's go for it. Let's convince the different parties in the Knesset to support it. And many civilians tried, but actually it didn't stick. Like, not big.
No
change.
politician
Yeah.
really pushed.
Wow. Yeah, because I feel like in Israel, every politician who tries to do something really big and really different kind of gets like a great pushback, no matter from each side. Like politicians in Israel are very much afraid of changing things, especially after 2000. So I feel like that's such a shame.
What was the year of this?
2000. Yeah, so a lot has changed, but from now, like now, if we'll take it and want to use it, it won't be relevant. For example, a lot of the things they talked about is like often in restaurants and cafes and Shabbat. And now in a lot of the secular areas, it's already often. Like if you will go in your trip to Tel Aviv or to Haifa, or even in some places in Jerusalem, you can have coffees, you can have bars, you can have a lot of the things that there it was still an issue. But from the other side, a lot of the things that they talked about didn't happen, like public transportation. It's not exactly happening now the way they imagined it. So that was a big, actually, failure and disappointment that it's never.
It's also,
Worked out.
I think, worth
Yeah.
mentioning
Mhm.
that there is kind of like a zero-sum game between the depth of conversation and the political effect, unfortunately. So I think this is kind of like an example of like extreme of like depth and compromising, and like two different people with two different, perspectives going deep into a way that they can live with each other. But I feel that it was too deep to really affect the political system, because you need just like, okay, so who's win? Like no one. Okay, so why should I promote it? Unfortunately.
Among most politicians here too, and everywhere in the world, unless you can explain something in 30 seconds, it won't have any legs. It won't go.
Yeah.
So 2 years,
Yeah, I'm sure you guys can understand what happened. Okay, so let's just give 2 minutes about today and then hear yourself. Okay, so in the aspect of Shabbat, okay, we had a lot of different issues with that. We had a few significant big protests of ultra-Orthodox about like driving in Shabbat next to their neighborhoods. We had a lot of fights and issues with that. That was actually part of the reasons why this Gabizon Medan covenant started, because of this protest from both sides. But from the other hand, we also had a lot of protests of secular Jews wanting to go to do all these things and without being interrupted. So the first one was in Petah Tikva, like a lot of time ago. If you know, yeah, Zehava Gal'on, the like leader of Meretz, that's when she started to be a politician. She was a teacher that's going to the protest in Petah Tikva.
Petah Tikva is a suburb of Tel Aviv.
Yeah,
to be
that's true.
clear.
Yeah, very mixed suburb. And actually in Kiryat Yovel, which is a neighborhood in Jerusalem where my brother and my sister-in-law lives, there was a lot of protests from both sides, and then they kind of wrote their own covenant between the ultra-Orthodox and the secular in the neighborhood, in the office of the mayor, which was amazing. And a lot of people learned from that process, like what each side is willing to do to make sure everyone gets education, you know, because in the same neighborhood, there is a thing of like, we have these buildings, whose school's gonna be? Because we can't go to the same schools. Yours is separated, ours is secular, but like, it's a lot of big questions, and the way they dealt with it was actually amazing. And this was Merav Michaeli, the head of the Labor Party, which last year in the last government was the Minister of Transportation, they call it. And she actually decided that the metro that is now being built in Tel Aviv and the whole area will be opened also on Shabbat, which was kind of like saying, I'm not going with the status quo, which got a lot of people nervous, because now in the new government, which is completely different than the government we had, since the status quo is kind of like broken.
Don't raise expectations.
Yeah, it's kind of making people nervous. Okay, so with kosher food, we had a lot of issues with like who is being like authorized to say what is kosher and what is not. Like there is no law that you have to eat kosher. There is no law that any restaurant has to be kosher, but there is the law that if you want to use the name kosher on something, it has to be authorized. You can't just say like, oh, I open a restaurant, I call it kosher, and no one is supervising it. Yeah, Jana.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the law that changed that has happened just in the last couple of years. So it doesn't have to be just the ultra-Orthodox main rabbi doing it.
Yeah.
It can be any person, or any rabbi or local official that can do it.
Can you repeat that?
Of course, yeah. So what Jana said is actually very correct and updated. This is Matan Kahana, which was the Minister of Religions in the last government, which was very much different in the style of this one. And what Jana said is that he changed who is in charge of supervising what is kashrut, and he opened it up to a little bit more liberal rabbis, still not the whole spectrum that we know, but much bigger spectrum. And of course, it got a little bit of people to be scared, like maybe now I see it's kosher and it is not my kosher. How do I know it's kosher enough for me? So you really try to make sure everything is written in a way everyone can use this information and know what anyone can eat and not eat. But it was still a big change. And the last thing I think, oh, okay.
Oh,
Or do you want to touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, so education maybe is the biggest topic right now in Israel, because the numbers are pretty clear. The ultra-Orthodox are growing as a group in Israel, growing actually very rapidly. They used to be, I think, 6%, now they're 13%. They're supposed to be almost 30% till I think 2040. It's like they're really really growing. Yeah. And in this, if it will continue, which again, it's very demographic in general is pretty hard topic to kind of like to predict. But if it will continue and the numbers of people who are not really learning science will continue that way, the economics of Israel won't last. And this is a huge thing. Always there is conversation around that and how we create it and how we change it. We want to talk about bells.
Yeah.
So before the new, this new government, it was like we've been one step from bells, which one denomination in the ultra-Orthodox Hasidic community, like agreeing to teach science for getting more fund from the state.
Yeah, because they didn't, now if you don't teach all the secular studies, you don't get the same budget from the country, which is fair. But they were willing to change that because they needed the money. And the big rabbi there was like, okay, let's do it.
Fortunately, this government kind of like kicked it and kind of like just gave money without the science.
Yeah, so that was a huge problem. I won't
Still is
say,
new.
yeah, that we still have processes of going because a lot of ultra-Orthodox saying, you know what, my politicians, my representatives don't really represent my needs because I want my kids to be able to go to high tech and have good money. And I want schools that keeps them ultra-Orthodox, keeps them learning all the Torah they need, all the services in the morning, fine. But I still want them to have all that information and knowledge. And I can share about my hometown, which is half ultra-Orthodox, half secular. We used to have one school like that is Haredi, ultra-Orthodox, but with secular studies. And now we have, like in the last 2 years, they opened like 6 more. So we see the demand, we see that there is a change in this status quo from the inside, not from above, not from the politicians. And we hope it will reach the demand that needed to change the economy system. But it's kind of like now is the biggest issue in the status quo. Yeah.
I'm sorry, the schools, the 6 that were opened are secular schools or no, they were more Orthodox schools?
There are Orthodox schools in order like
Ultra-Orthodox schools that learning science.
it's like Haredi schools that you it's like separated girls and boys. They have services in the morning. They learn Gemara and Talmud and everything they need in the ultra-Orthodox way, but they also have math, English, everything else they need in order to
be able to interact with the rest of
Yeah.
society.
Or there a segment that is anti-science that is very dominant, or do they just say, we don't need it?
they just say these years that the kids are learning, they're creating their own identity. This is more important years to create your Jewish identity. And then if they want after they're 18, they can catch up on all these things. And a lot of people actually did it, but it's like they're not anti-learning these things in general, just not in this age. But of course, it's not enough.
And they want to be able to get the money without having to do
Exactly.
those things.
It's a combination of 2 different things. One, it's like a total fear of process of secularism, right? And it happened before, it's also here. It's like everywhere that the Ultra-Orthodox community are always in kind of like in a in a fear of someone will make me secular or my kids secular, and they fear from they scared from science make them secular, which is not rootless. Like exposing to science can affect, we said it as religious people that also learn a lot of science. There is contradictions. You can live with that, but there is a price for it.
No, and I will say that a lot of secular Jews in Israel are also afraid that now in the school systems they do teach about the Bible stories and stuff like that, and they say, no, you'll make my kids ultra-Orthodox, don't teach them about the Bible. And so I'm saying, like, I can understand that sometimes people are so
Don't touch my education.
Yeah.
The second thing is actually a pretty new theological perspective, which is kind of like emphasizing on kids learning Torah, but without any border. Like, like we just want to make them as much learning as they can. And they just, I don't know, and it's just trying to achieve as much learning time as they can. It's pretty new thing. Like, of course, Torah learning is important, and it was important for years, but now it's kind of a weird game. I'm not sure even how to.
Yeah, it's the first time we have a country that supports it financially.
Yeah.
That's why it's like that. Yeah.
So how does this carry over in the university system? I mean, obviously places like Technion are all in on science and engineering, but what about like, Hebrew University or Haifa University, some of the other more broad
They're
based
mostly not there. They're just not there. Like,
that already don't go at all.
there is Haredi campuses in the Ono.
Yeah,
There is
some
trying to build,
colleges.
and again, it is raising like another challenges, which is separation between males and females in a public space, which is not necessarily okay, in terms of like equality,
Right.
right? So it's a lot of different interests.
It's a lot of problem because the Haredi, a lot of them say, okay, I want to go to like higher schools like colleges or universities, but I can't learn in like a mixed setting. Therefore, you have to choose as a country. What are you like prioritize more? Because some professors and teachers who are women, for example, might be getting hurt from not being able to teach in these places, but our economy needs them to learn computer science and go work in a better job.
I think
Yeah.
Patricia,
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
How do the Orthodox perceive all of the wonderful inventions and technology that's come out of Israel? Are they accepting of that? Because I mean, talk about science and engineering.
I think
Yeah.
we should separate between Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox. The Orthodox people or the modern Orthodox people definitely accepting it. Actually, we have to say that like the percentage of modern Orthodox in colleges in Israel is like really high. So modern Orthodox is not part of it. Ultra-Orthodox, they have problem with that. And again, it depends which denomination inside it.
No, and also we have to see like if it's about like medical technology, or they will take anything. It's not like they're banning anything, but a lot of the communities don't like to have smart cell phones and smart computers in the houses unless like a lot of the times the woman works and they obviously have a better phones and
Maybe you should say something
that's-
about it.
yeah. Okay. So since the man goes to study Torah, a lot of the times the woman works to support them, but there it's not like, oh, we don't want you to learn science. Like the schools for girls in the ultra-Orthodox communities are very good. They have a lot of science, a lot
They're
of math.
crazily good, we need to say. Like
Yeah.
they're
Because
maybe the top in Israel in terms of like science.
in
It's very
some
good.
aspects,
Some extent.
because they want the girls to be able to provide the family and have good salaries. They don't want the family to be in poverty. And therefore, actually, the girls have, a lot of them goes to colleges, a lot of them go to the universities. And we have a lot of women already in the high-tech and the bank system, like that's not a problem. And a lot of the time in the same family, the woman will have a cell phone, which is like iPhone, and a computer like that. And like the father and the kids will have like kosher phones, which is kind of like the old ones we had that are not touch and crazy. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, I might be wrong, but aren't there different levels of ultra-Orthodox communities as well?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they each have different
That's
value
true.
systems.
Yeah, so Joanna asked about different. So of course, like we say now ultra-Orthodox, but they don't see them as one group at all. They have a lot of different small denominations, and also the openness to technology, to science, to women working, men working is very different. Okay.
It's hard.
I want to, Patricia had her hand up. Oh,
Oh, I answered.
okay.
I realize I'm gonna say something that we absolutely do not have time to talk about now, but like it'll be a whole other hour to talk about the way that non-Orthodox Jews, non-Orthodox, but still religious and practicing Jews, like Masortim and the Tanakh Reforming, how that even like plays in, because you have a definition of Judaism that is not supported by either the Haredim or the Chilonim.
Yeah.
True.
And how
We
that
should open
even,
it.
how that
Maybe
even fits.
after, maybe in the end of.
Yeah, no, I'm done with the presentation, so we can just do any questions. you want. Yeah.
So if the women are going to the high-tech schools, they're obviously gonna be exposed to male teachers
Mhm.
as far as that. So how do they
They
resolve that issue?
So
They
they're
have to
not really
reconcile.
going, also the women, the ultra-Orthodox women, they're not really going to the classic colleges, but they have a really high standard in their, it's kind of like a private colleges. right? So in Israel, you can't open like private college.
No, but they are also exposing to men and secular people in general in the work
In the
system.
work,
But they're
mature people, I guess.
yeah, I feel like they're counting on the girls more. Yeah.
So I have a question really that may hinge on so much of what we talked about today. And that is, I think two words that we've used the words here, but I want to put them together. And one word is education, because in some respects, I think that the many groups in Israel have to educate one another about themselves. But by the same token, there needs to be compromise. I think so much of Jewish history, way before this era, has been built on discussion and compromise. And that's something I don't see a lot of today. I wonder if one of you would comment on that.
Wow. First, for sure, we need to learn more, and every group need to learn more about the other group. I would say that, like, in individualistic perspective, there is, I think, both, or every side can feel, I don't know if discriminated, but kind of like hurt. A lot of ultra-Orthodox, when they walking in Tel Aviv, they can like hear offensive calls against them, for sure. Of course, that if a secular person will go in Bnei Brak, it will be bad. Not for sure, but like
In certain parts, maybe.
it happened before.
Yeah.
So in the individuality part, everyone can feel kind of like offended by someone else. In the bigger perspective, we need to talk, and I think maybe this is kind of like the main topic here, that Israel is kind of a box of different dreams, right? We have box, we have this country, but it's not just, country for, and just everyone wants just to live their life and leave them alone. It's more a lot of different dreams and different end games that contradicted. We see that today. And the art or the goal or the mission is try to keep them together. And I think it's also part of the beauty in Israel. These like different dreams.
Yeah, and that's why the status quo is so important, because that's acknowledging that I'm not living my dream and you're not living yours. And if one of us will try that, the whole building will collapse, because we're kind of like maintaining, so we won't have to decide and make hard decisions, because Israel is like built on such a wide spectrum of perspectives. So if we go back to Cantor's statement about the other groups who are not secular, not Haredi, but are in this spectrum, sometimes for them it's really challenging, and a lot of the changes that was being tried to do wasn't from the secular side, it was from these different groups. For example, the modern Orthodox communities, that their rabbis are not being respected in all this authorized kashrut regulations or rabbanut regulations. Or, for example, we have not as big as the modern Orthodox, but we have the group of the Reform Jews in Israel and the conservative Jews in Israel that wants to have maybe different kind of rabbis being with the same acknowledgement that or the whole thing about the wall. And we have another marriage. And we have another group that we haven't discussed it yet, that's called the Masorti group, which is not the conservative as a denomination. It's more a Sephardic Jews group, where they don't decide if they're secular or if they are Orthodox. It's a spectrum, and they want, okay, it's like different because the rabbis that they follow and they want them to get married through are Orthodox, but they don't follow Orthodox laws. You see that
their history is different. In the Sephardi Jewish community, the division between Orthodox, Reform, and Conservative did not happen the same way. Where they became distinct groups. They had more like division within and spectrum of practice within. So you would have, Sephardi Jews who would go to school or go to synagogue in the morning and then go play soccer afterward. And,
So that's the synagogue I grew up in. Was like some people walked, some people drove, some people smoked outside and then entered. Some people wearing jeans, some people was wearing like a black yarmulke. So the whole spectrum was in the same Sephardic shul that my parents went to. And for them, for example, if you talk about the school system, if they have to go to a secular school that barely teach Judaism, or to a school that they have to wear yarmulke the whole time and to go to services every morning, and they don't feel like they're belonged anywhere. So that's another group that something saying like, so now in the past last years, we had another way, schools that another school systems that was open that is kind of like trying to approach all these groups that I mentioned, like the Reform, Conservative, and Masorti together, that they will have school where, for example, in the morning, you can choose between services and yoga or mindfulness. You can, you have a secular teacher and a religious teacher in the same classroom. So
Are there a number of these schools, or is it really just like where's an example of one of these
in
schools?
Jerusalem, in Maskerat Batya, in Modi'in, in
There are a
Tel
few
Aviv.
around, okay.
Remember to
So-
talk loud, everybody, please.
So is there any standardized educational curriculum that applies at least to all the schools that will teach science and technology and English?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah. Just not if it's like private or half private, which most of the ultra-Orthodox places
Then they
are.
don't have to do any of that.
But they don't get
Yeah.
funded.
Well, here,
Yeah.
if it's private, you still have to meet the state's curriculum standards.
Mhm.
You can do additional things, you can have different emphases,
Yeah,
but there's a baseline.
so they don't.
So, yeah.
I hear something that you said, which interested me. I think among the secular Jews, which is how large today? 65%?
It's hard to count because of the conservative, the Masorti Jews that are, some of them states are like that, but probably 43% are completely pure secular.
But counting that 43%, plus others who may be, who have roots in Israel from the time of the independence, it sounds as if you're saying that they would be hurt. They would be offended in a change in the status quo.
Why is that? Because
I don't know. I'm thought I heard you say the sensibilities of different groups.
can go any other direction. So some of the changes might be bad for them. Not every change is good.
Well, that's why I'm asking, what do you think the secular community would say? Yeah, what would they be afraid of from not from the Dati, but from the other religious groups that might be more liberal or more modern, who could deal with themselves with compromise. But this other group might say, we liked the status quo. We thought it led.
Challenging from the liberal side for the secular.
Yeah.
So because of the Masortiim, which is probably the majority in Israel, I think, like traditional Jews, which is kind of like not specifically observant, but like the rabbi that they're not observant of is an Orthodox rabbi. See that? So they, for example, they don't want to feel that like Israel is a country that like it's not Jewish country, right? So if there will be two, I don't know, they will say one government would say like we're just regular country. I was like no, right? Or I don't know. I can.
A lot of symbolic issues, and also I feel like the biggest fear from both sides is about the women's status, because sometimes you're trying to accommodate Orthodox living, and that sometimes actually hurts women. Even if you're not intentional in doing it and you're not coming from like a chauvinist places, like for example, like trying to accommodate college learning to ultra-Orthodox can somehow affect women professors, right? So that's an example where like a lot of people say like, don't touch the status quo, it's good as it is. I don't want my rights as a woman to, God forbid, being hurt.
I mean, as you say that the Masorti, if they belonged to a synagogue or if they had a rabbi, it would be an Orthodox rabbi. As a lot of Israelis like to say that, I think, about Reform, certainly, because Reform movement always puts out polls to say that among the secular Jews, if they were religious,
It was their religion.
then Reform would be their movement that they would be attached II
Interesting.
Yeah.
In Israel,
in Israel. Yes.
I think it's also something got changed. And maybe it's part of the idea that the status quo is like now weaker than ever, I think. Because it was status quo, and now I'm not sure this is the status quo. Like the status quo was between secular and like democratic and Jewish, right? Like, you know, this thing of like Jewish democratic country. It's like two different things. So it's kind of like more secular and the religious, and the religious people are Orthodox. And maybe now, maybe part of the reason that it's pretty weak now, the status quo, is the idea that like maybe the status quo is not standing anymore. There is multiple denominations. There is multiple approaches to
Be Jewish.
be Jewish, not just
Jewish be
And to be
yeah.
religiously
Yeah.
Jewish.
exactly.
But
This
you,
is actually something. This is something that I truly believe that we as Israelis we need more. And I'm not reformed or conservative. I think we need these denominations to be more active in Israel. I truly believe it. Like that, because it makes the question not question of like if I'm Jewish or secular, to be what is Judaism, right? And I think it's totally different question.
I had that with my friend. She was shlicha in Cleveland, and she came from a whole secular family, no bat mitzvah, like nothing more significant. And after a year in Cleveland, she went to all these like different denominations, synagogues and congregations, and she said, I'm secular, but if I would have a Reform synagogue in my town, I would go to it. But since I don't, I'm secular. So that's what she understood about herself after that year. And I feel like that's a big lack we have in Israel. We don't have enough of this various congregations.
I mean, the Tanakh Reforming in Israel has been, it's been around for a while, but they're still like trying to like constantly like get their foot in the door.
Yeah.
They're using, I mean, usually it's often like life cycle ceremonies that are the foot in the door, like, you know, B'nai Mitzvah or weddings where Chilonim don't want to go to an Orthodox rabbi. But it's still.
I think it's also, and I think it's not a bad thing. At first, it's not smell Israeli enough for Israelis. I think we need to
this movement, you mean the reform movement?
conservative and the reform
Oh, I see.
movement.
It feels like it's an American thing.
Make, I think we need to make an adjustment to Israeli. I know, so synagogue that I love is called Zion. I don't know if it's
Kehilat Zion.
Kehilat Zion.
Yeah.
Kehilat Zion, it's something that I think I'm not sure if they identify as conservative, but they practically, I think, around conservatism. But they're very Israeli in a deep way. So it's kind of like I don't know.
Yeah, like the music is Israeli, like
Especially the melding of Ashkenazi and Sephardi
Exactly.
culture.
It's like more welcoming toward Sephardic
and it's
traditions.
Yeah.
And
What I also hear you say maybe is that with more graduates, at least from the seminary that we know, from the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem, with the more that Israelis, from native-born Israelis, or graduate from there and proliferate into the community, maybe that will. It takes time, obviously, and maybe the other movements have something similar happening too.
definitely, and I would love to say even something more challenging here. And I think this is a paradigm that I hope to change, which is the paradigm of the question: is Israel liberal enough for us? And I think it's an ongoing question in.
Who's us? Who's us?
So us, where I say it's like, I think it's American Jewry,
Okay.
not just specific denomination.
Okay.
And with good reasons. I think it's a good question with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, with the control of ultra-Orthodox in the system. I think that I've heard it a lot of kind of like, we're in a process of like, we need to decide, right? And I think it's with good reason. It's like really frustrating. And to some extent, I feel like right now with the protests and everything, that to some extent, Israel needs us, right? More than we need Israel to some extent. And I think that this paradigm should kind of like change into a situation that like, we need to make Israel liberal enough for us without the question mark, without if. And like, we are one people, we're the same story. And the situation is not necessarily good, but we need to make it better. And I think it's a paradigm shift that is extremely necessary.
It's a paradigm shift that has to happen on both sides.
Exactly.
Because people who call Israel their home, physically as well as psychologically, they need to accept perhaps that the influence, and however we define that, I just want to be general, that the influence from the diaspora is important. How important and what is the level of that importance, it has to be defined much more clearly than it is now, because it used to be that Israelis, in my perspective,
Yeah.
they would say, it's nice that you're here, but when you go home, you're home and you're not here. Or you don't pay taxes here. You don't send your children to the army. So you have nothing in Malasot. You have nothing, you have no dog in this fight. No skin in the game.
So this is exactly
But
why.
so that if we change that paradigm,
Yeah.
and if people agree to changing that paradigm somehow.
So let me ask a question about demographics and
Mhm.
how this fits in. The ultra-Orthodox population is growing more rapidly than the other populations. It's becoming a larger part of the country. I suspect it's mostly due to childbirth and not
Childbirth, just childbirth.
immigration.
Yeah.
Just childbirth.
Or people leaving who are secular.
Mhm.
The notion of Israel becoming more liberal or more integrated into the community of nations, or at least American and Western European type of democracy. Is it, I mean, is that sort of not going to happen because at some point the demographics are going to shift so strongly towards, Haredi and other ultra-Orthodox that it's going to be an ultra-Orthodox state?
So this is a possible path, definitely. Again, okay, we can open it. I think it's first demographic, it's very tricky thing, right? Like if you have the opportunity to read some kind of like predictions like 100 years ago about demographic, most of them, even 100% of them are wrong. So demographic is pretty hard to predict. And specifically the demographic of the ultra-Orthodox are like connected totally to money of the government. And maybe we'll open here another Pandora box, which is, and it's part of the idea of this agreements, the status quo, connected to the fact that Israel is created by socialists and used to be till today pretty socialist country. And again, you can be pro this or not pro this, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that like the country is big part of your life. It's not just kind of like an instrument or a dish, right? That people can live inside it. It's something way more active, way more, I don't know, exist in your life, right? So to create status quo is not just like fringe. It is your life because you need to decide what's the character of your country, which is not just a tool for something.
We just had an example of that. A lot of secular Jews and said, you know what? Now we are paying for education from age 0 to 3. After age 3, the kid is in the school system and the government pays for it. So we want it to be from age 0 to 3, also paid by the country, okay? And it makes sense, right? Like, why not? They pay tax. They pay taxes. They want it back. But a lot of important and scholars of economy said, no, don't do it. Because it sounds good for you. It sounds like, oh, I'm going to get a present from the country. But you have 3 kids in average secular family, and other families that pay less taxes now have 12 kids. So you think you're getting a present from the government, from the country, but that's actually you're paying more. Like long term, your taxes will pay more. So it's a lot of things that like, it's usually like, should a country have a lot of different support for the individuals? It's a question that each country deals with, but in Israel, we have to deal with it in a different level because it affects us.
I think it's really interesting perspective because it challenged us. I talk about myself. It challenged me as someone who believes in social values, right? And kind of like naturally, it's like social values, liberalism, it's all everything, right? And here is a thing that if I'll stack to these social values, this demographic will continue, and then
Half
there
of
will
it,
be
half
those
of it
growth.
is Canada, okay.
See what I'm saying here? Like,
Mhm.
it's a very complicated situation for someone with like social values and liberal and to hold together. And I think in Israel, it's pretty special right now in this perspective.
Any questions from people online who are with us?
Yes, I have a question. I'm hearing a lot of terminology thrown around for what we've always kind of lumped together the same thing, but I hear you talking about secular Jews, about Reform Jews, and we've always called the Reform congregations in Israel progressive. So I'm not sure if it's all the same thing or if these are different groups, or I would appreciate some clarification on the terminology.
Okay, we have like Yadut, I'm sure Rabbi can answer that better.
Well, I know that there has been a shift actually in the last few years. We used to talk about the Yahadut Mitkademet, which in English means progressive Judaism, which was basically identified with Reform in America, because they were a member, the Israeli Movement for Progressive Judaism was a member of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, which is what the American Reform Movement is a member of. So we are all under that one sort of umbrella. But I've heard terminology change in the last 5-10 years, something like that. They're more likely to use the term Yahadut Reformit, specifically Reform Judaism, rather than Yahadut Mitkademet. Again, that's just for this particular movement.
Yeah.
They're still under the umbrella of the World Union for Progressive Judaism.
So then
in
what
terms-
about our guests today have been referring to secular Jews. Are these Jews that aren't religious Jews? They're really Israelis, but they're not observant and they don't belong to Judaism, or it's a little confusing.
They're-
Sorry.
Judaism, I think this is the kind of like the essence of Zionism, is that Judaism can be nationality.
And not a religion.
National identity.
They see themselves as Jewish, as part of the Jewish people. It's not necessarily, and they can also do like sometimes bar mitzvah, or they can also do brit, but not necessarily from a religious reason, but more like, I want to be part of this people, and that's a nice tradition that they're doing.
That's true here too. We
Mhm.
call them like, I'm culturally Jewish,
Mhm.
but I'm not religiously Jewish.
We had a
It's sort of that same
scholar,
concept.
a famous scholar in America, Mordecai Kaplan, who
Yeah.
referred to Judaism as a civilization, of which religion is a part, but not the only part.
So even though I have to say that, and I love and appreciate Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, I think this is more like community-wise. What kind of community will we create? As a Jew in Israel, it's life or death situation, right? Like if you decide to go to the army, if you're going to the army as a Jew, again, not only Jewish people are in the army, but if you're Israeli and your identity is Jewish, right? And you're going to the army, it's not a theoretical question. And this is part of the idea of like Judaism as nationality, right? It's something that I'm will to fight for. It's something that I will to protect my people for. It is make everything way more complicated because
And it created kind of like a new religion, which means the secular Jews, for them, like for example, Hatikva, or the flag of Israel, or the Yom HaZikaron. It's kind of like the holy days and themes that for us it's
Doing like a big, like our equivalent of like the Thanksgiving, Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade happens on Sukkot, right? Like the big parade where all the soccer clubs and things like that. So then when all the kids are out in costumes, it's Purim.
yeah.
Or like doing the police induction on Hanukkah, or things like that, right? You know, like those kind of like civil religion, right? Where it's like it's connected to the Judaism in the public sphere, but it's not religious.
Yeah.
even though the outcomes are like, if you will walk, for me, Yom HaZikaron, the Israel Memorial Day, is the most holy day of the year. And for most of the Israelis, this is the most holy day of the year. And it's not like civilian, it's Thanksgiving in a way that it's kind of like light and people are crying, people are fit. There's maybe it's also with Thanksgiving. I'm not saying it's not.
Well, I was saying again, I drew the connection for like
definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
As far as right, like the parade is what I was saying. As far as like something that's part of the national, it's like a national observance that's not religious.
Joanna, you wanted to say?
To speak to Sue's question. I
Speak up louder, please.
I have a friend, well, Shlichim, past Shlichim, who are here. And talking about secular, we connect, she and I connect on the phone. Yeah, when we talk about Shabbat, I say, what are you doing for Shabbat? And she says, oh, nothing. We're going with our family, maybe nothing. That's her definition of secular, okay? As far as people, the demographics of Israel, we're talking about the ultra-Orthodox and the fact that they are growing. My understanding is that a lot of them, they raise their kids Orthodox, the kids leave. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. You know, they choose other things as well. So I'm sure it's growing, but maybe not as fast as the numbers say. And the third thing is, as far as the report is concerned, our spotlight, Kesher Israel Spotlight, came out a couple of days ago. And on it, there is a list of the numbers of Reformed Jews in Israel, not the Jews themselves, but the different organizations and groups that are expanding. And that's just like, I think that was 2 years ago. And they're expanding, I can't say exponentially, but considerably. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I realize that we're focusing on the Jews in Israel, and we talk about, you know, the Jews in Israel, and the Jewish state. But in fact, there's Christians in Israel. There are a lot of Arabs in Israel, Muslims. And I don't know where they all come into this discussion, but I mean, they're a fact. And it seems like they're kind of not acknowledged in this whole discussion.
It's really important point that you brought. We started by the status quo, which is more Jewish perspective of it,
Right.
But it's definitely important point, and also complicated for sure. We're not throwing it away and say like it's nothing. It is very complicated. I want to say what I said about the army, for example. One thing that is changed is the idea of solidarity, which is not necessarily Jewish. I had friend, he is my family in my team. He's Druzi. He's not Jewish. He feels totally Israeli. And I think that's now in Israel, we creating, I guess it's an ongoing process, something new, a new identity. And no one really knows how to do it. And there is a lot of like, there is tough things, but also there is pretty hopeful things that happening. We can talk about Mansour Abbas as a religious leader for Ra'am, which is an Arab party, the first Arab party in the government last year, that he's constantly talking about civilian alliance between Arab and Jews and different groups in Israel. But this is an ongoing process and not necessarily smooth one.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sue, you bring up a really important issue. And sadly, we don't have a lot of time in our pre-trip briefing to go into every little aspect of things. And today's topic was really intended to be talking about the different Jewish groups in Israel. That's complicated enough.
Connor, you might have mentioned it next time.
Yeah.
We were going to get
Yes.
into some of those other issues specifically about other religions.
Next time, specifically, we're going to be speaking Israeli-Palestinian and bring in others too. Yeah. Let me ask if there are any, we're almost toward 3:30, which was our advertised closing time. Let me ask if there are any last minute questions that we can answer on one foot. And we can certainly save them until next time. I do have to apologize. We had some people have trouble getting online today. I don't know why that was. And then we have always the sound question, which we'll work on and make sure it's better next time. I have some solutions. We'll make that happen differently. Thank you for your patience. But any last minute substantive questions that we could address?
Just to thank the team. This is a wonderful presentation and great insights.
Okay, we'll do like the young people doing the selfie.
You're still the young people.
Everybody looks. That's good. Everybody wave or something. On television, wave, on online wave.
Close enough.
Okay, good. Ta-da.
Okay.
Thank you all. Be well. A very happy and for those who observe kosher Pesach, and a very important Pesach, and a tasty Pesach, and a healthy Pesach. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Shalom
And you'll-
lehitraot.
And you'll be sending out information on the airlines when that comes out?
We sure will. We
Okay,
sure will.
Thank you.
Bye-bye all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Like.